Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our new module of Authentic Africa. We've been doing a few different sessions here before this one today, and today we will talk about Rwanda and Uganda, two countries in East Africa, which are quite interesting and beautiful to visit. Just as a recapture, my name is Andrea Radke. I'm the owner and operator of Lion Dog African Safaris. And typically at this time of the year, I am visiting multiple cities throughout Canada as well as the US to talk to people about Africa, show them what there's to experience, etc. The situation globally right now does not allow me to do my yearly road trip. So I'm trying to stay connected with you guys doing these video presentations. Module 3 today about Africa will take us back to East Africa. And I just want to quickly say something else. I want to not really apologize, but a little bit acknowledge that I wasn't necessarily doing what I promised you to do. I told you I would present you with short, palatable videos about traveling to Africa. And I did not quite achieve that because if you look back, the previous two videos were quite long. And I apologize for that because it sounds like I have a lot to say about Africa, and I actually do. And honestly, I didn't want to make those videos any shorter. It's not that I planned on doing them that long, but I didn't want to or don't want to shorten them a lot because I feel the information that I've been giving you is important, and I want you to know what you didn't know before, and I want you to have a really good idea of what there is in Africa. So that's why those videos were longer than anticipated. The good thing is they can, and you can skip forward. Skip forward if there are parts that don't interest you or review what you thought was important and you wanted to have another look or so. That's the beauty of these recorded meetings. So I hope you can forgive me. I try to make this one shorter. We only cover one area really, and I'm hoping to keep it to about half an hour today. If not, skip forward. So to not keep you that much longer, I am going to start sharing my screen with you here, like I always do, so you can see what I am talking about, and you can check out some pictures, etc. So here we go. This is our presentation. Today, as I said before, we'll talk about Uganda and Rwanda. Let's dive right in so I don't have to keep you much longer. Two countries, both in East Africa and bordering, both of them. This is Uganda, the big one here. This is Rwanda, the small one here, both bordering with Tanzania. So the country right next to it, sharing Lake Victoria with Uganda, part of it in Kenya. So this little corner here is Kenya, but this big country down here is Tanzania, and Uganda in the north and Rwanda northwest of Tanzania. I spoke a little bit about game safari in Uganda last time in the last module. So I covered Murchison Falls National Park as well as Queen Elizabeth National Park a little bit. So if you want to know more about it, go back to the module last week or send me a message, and I can answer any questions you may have about those two game safaris areas. I'll talk a little bit about it as we go forward. So today, what we will mainly cover in Rwanda and Uganda is the gorilla trekking. Those are the two areas that are most suitable to trek the mountain gorillas. And we'll also talk about chimp trekking in Uganda also. So those will be covered mainly in this presentation. And what I will also talk about, which I find is one of the nice things, or the really unique and authentic things you can do in East Africa, is a road trip in Uganda. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well, because I think it's something quite wonderful and beautiful to do if you are interested in some of that. So let's go forward. Gorilla trekking, as I mentioned before, are the two is one of the main reasons why people would go to Rwanda or Uganda. And there are differences between gorilla trekking in either of these countries. And in short, they are put there in the little boxes. The first big difference between the two is the permit cost. It doesn't matter where you go gorilla trekking, if it is Rwanda or Uganda, the maximum allowed time to spend with the gorillas is 1 hour per person. Usually the groups are 8 to 10 people. Sometimes it's 10 if there's a lot of demand in Uganda. In Rwanda, there will never be more than 8 people in one group. Sometimes in Uganda, the additional people are researchers or students that join the group to learn more or to assist the rangers. Usually it's only 8 guests, and then there may be another person or two joining for science or scientific reasons. The trek in Uganda is comparable to the trek in Rwanda. I have heard people tell me they were trekking in Rwanda for 4 hours to see the mountain gorillas. It can happen in Uganda. Often it is shorter, but it is often also shorter in Rwanda. So often, I would say the average time on the mountain to go and see the gorillas is an hour and a half to 2 hours. I trekked gorillas in Uganda twice. The first time we were on the trek about 45 minutes to get to the gorillas. The second time we were on the trek about 30 minutes to get to the gorillas. I do not know if that is typical. I was very surprised both times when we were at the gorillas in such a short time. There are people that take longer. It also depends on the strength of your group. If your group has some trekkers that are not very strong, that walk slow, that take more time to go up and down a mountain, then your group will stay at the pace of that weakest member of your group. So the groups are not getting split up. If somebody takes more time, then the whole group will be walking slower, which can sometimes have an influence on how long you are going to be on the mountain. So the gorillas could be fairly close, but if you have a tracker in your group or a guest in your group that walks slowly or has difficulty on the trail, then your whole group will walk slow, just so you know. And we do not really have a lot of influence on how the groups are put together. The rangers in the particular national park, so in Rwanda and volcanoes, or in Uganda and Bwindi or in Gahinga, the rangers there put the group together. They get a copy of your passports beforehand. They see how old you are, and they will put the younger folks together and the older folks together, and they will also sometimes talk to the guides, to your personal private guide, to get some information if you have a health problem or if you're not as mobile, etc. And they will try and accommodate you, but we do not have 100% influence on what kind of group you will be assigned to. So that's kind of somewhat out of our control. We can try, but we cannot guarantee a certain group to track or so, etc. So I got sidetracked a little bit. Let's talk more about the permit cost. So the permit cost in Rwanda is $1,500 per person to spend 1 hour with the mountain gorillas, not including the trekking. So once you see the gorillas, once you're with them with the group, with the family, the clock starts ticking and you have 1 hour to spend with them. The same is valid in Uganda. You get 1 hour with the group of gorillas, but here the permit is only $700 per person to spend 1 hour with the gorillas. So it's less than half the time. Less than half the cost in Uganda than it is in Rwanda. We do need a minimum of 3 nights per each country to get you to the gorillas, for you to track the gorillas, and then get you back to the city where the plane leaves to get you to your next component of your tour, or home, or wherever you are in your trip. But we do need a minimum of 3 nights in the country to get you to the gorillas, track the gorillas, and get back. The terrain difficulty in Rwanda would be considered medium. In Uganda, it would be considered medium to hard. That depends a little bit in what area you're going to track, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Where in Rwanda, we only have one area where the gorillas can be tracked. In Uganda, we actually have 3 different areas, and it depends on which area you're going to track in. It depends how difficult your trek is. The terrain in Rwanda is kind of lush rainforest with slopes. Sometimes it is muddy there. In Uganda, it is very lush because we're deeper into the rainforest. There's more foliage, there are more ferns, there's more underbrush in Uganda. And the slopes can be steeper, can be very comparable to Rwanda. Like I said before, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But it is often muddy in Uganda. It is raining more in Uganda than it does in Rwanda because we're closer to the equator. We're quite close in Uganda already, in Rwanda already, but we're even closer to the equator when we're in Uganda. So prepare for rain, prepare for possibly muddy trails. Take some rain gear in each case, Rwanda or Uganda, because you will be in the rainforest. The experience to see the gorillas is spectacular. It is quite something. You get very close to the gorillas. There is a minimum distance of 6-7 meters required. That's the requirement that are set up by the wildlife authorities, both Uganda and Rwanda. However, because you're on a slopy mountain, and if the gorillas are coming closer to you and you have no way to back up, you will be closer to them. And I have been quite close to the gorillas on their account. People used to say a few years ago that the gorillas in Uganda are not as habituated than they are in Rwanda. It's not true. The Uganda gorillas are just as habituated. They're playing around. They're sometimes playing tricks on people. Like we had a little juvenile gorilla. He would be coming from a tree a little bit, out of my peripheral vision. He would be coming and then he would make some somersaults and then plunk down in the long grass, just sitting there as if he would say, "Come on, take a picture of me." And the ranger actually said, "This one is a naughty one. Like this gorilla is a naughty gorilla." He would come and he would push people down the slope, and they would be going rolling instead of him. The people would be going rolling. So they're trying to keep the people away from that particular gorilla because he has a tendency of being naughty to people. So they are habituated. They know the people. They know that they can play with them, and they are quite friendly and quite curious about us for sure. There are the groups of gorillas are of different strength, and I will inform you of the size of the families you are about to visit in your proposal when you decide you want to go and see the gorillas in either Rwanda or Uganda. So it's a wonderful experience. It can be a difficult trek, but nobody should be discouraged to do the trek. It is absolutely doable. There are porters available for hire, and I strongly encourage you to hire a porter when you go on your gorilla trek, not just for your help, but also to support the economy, because these people that are coming to be porters, that can sometimes be their only job they will have for a week or two, sometimes even for a month. That's their only income, and if you hire them to be a porter, you will pay them in cash. It's about $15 for the trek, which is quite affordable. They will carry your pack. They will help you up and down the mountain. They will steady your steps if you're somewhere in a more difficult area, and they are absolutely worthwhile taking with you. You can talk with them. You can ask them about their situation, what they do, how they live, etc. Some of them, or quite many of them, they have another job. I met, for instance, a lady. She was my porter just in February when I went to Uganda, or late January, and she actually also was a tea picker. So she would go pick tea when there ever was a job available for going to pick tea, and then she would always try to become a porter for gorilla trekking. And some of these people walk 15-20 kilometers to the meeting point to be picked as a porter. And if they don't get picked, they go home 15-20 kilometers with no job. So hire a porter. If you feel like you can afford it, or you want a little bit more support, even hire two. You can do that for sure. And it's something good you can do for the community there, and support them and help these people, make a living. It's the same in Uganda and Rwanda. So same roads, same pricing, and same benefits for the people and same benefits for you as well. So these are the main differences between the actual gorilla trekking in Rwanda and Uganda. And I will show you now where we typically do this and what kind of logistics are required to go gorilla trekking. So let's start with Rwanda, the country down here. So mostly we will fly into Kigali. Kigali is the capital of Rwanda, has an international airport, and you'd fly into Kigali, and most international flights come in the evening. So the first night would be spent in Kigali, overnight in the city, in a hotel, boutique hotel, chain hotel, whichever fits your budget. The next morning, you will be taken on a road drive by your private guide in your own private vehicle towards Volcanoes National Park. So this is pretty much the main road leading all the way to Volcanoes. There's a town, it's called Muzanji, where there's a few of the venues we use. And then there's another town a little closer to the forest. It's called Ruangeri, or a little bit more northeast, I would say. It's called Ruangeri, where we also have a few venues that we often use. That drive from Kigali to Volcanoes is about 3 hours. Can be longer if you want to stop for pictures. You will pass through a few villages, etc., and you'll get a little bit of a glimpse of what Rwanda looks like. It's called the land of 1,000 hills. So you'll drive through some of these hills. You'll drive through some villages. You can stop for pictures. You can take your time to get to the Volcanoes National Park, and you will stay overnight. Then the next morning early is the briefing at the headquarters, and then you'll go gorilla trekking. And because we do not know how long your trek is going to be, we don't typically schedule anything else for the rest of the day. Some people want to go back to Kigali the same day, and this can be done because it's only a 2-hour drive. Some people would rather stay in Volcanoes or close to Volcanoes and spend the afternoon and the evening there after a hard trek or long walking through the forest, etc. Spend the night there and drive back the next day to Kigali. We use some private safari airplane companies that service Kigali, and from Kigali you can fly directly into the Serengeti. Serengeti is right here. So from Kigali, we take a plane. It stops in Mwanza for immigration. So you stop here, get immigrations into Tanzania, and then we fly you directly into the Serengeti. This is the Serengeti. Here's the northern Serengeti, central Serengeti, western corridor. Southern Serengeti and Ndutu is a little bit further south. So you would fly from Kigali directly into the Serengeti to continue with your safari, or from Kigali, if the gorilla trekking was the last component of your tour, from Kigali you would fly home or wherever you're going after your tour. So that would be gorilla trekking in Rwanda. Now, we can do gorilla trekking in Uganda, close to the Rwanda border. There's 2 areas where we would go gorilla trekking in Uganda via Kigali. So that means you land in Kigali, same situation. You would stay at a hotel in Kigali, and then the next morning you would take the drive north, this main road here, either into Ngahinga National Park, which would take this road, or you would go into South Bwindi. Bwindi Impenetrable Forest is the national park here in Uganda, where we track the gorillas in South Bwindi, or we track them in North Bwindi. North Bwindi is typically accessed from the north via the road trip, which I will talk about in a little bit, or in the south via Kigali. So you could land in Kigali, drive to South Bwindi, which is about a 5 or 6 hour drive with a border crossing. So that's a longer drive to get to Uganda. Why would you do that? Because the permit is so much less compared to the permit in Rwanda. So you stay in Kigali, you drive to Uganda, track the gorillas in Uganda, then stay overnight, drive back to Kigali and catch the afternoon flight from Kigali into Serengeti. The flight that I'm talking about used to be early in the morning at 6 o'clock, but they're changing their schedule. So they're flying only, I believe it's 3 o'clock, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the plane leaves. So you'd have to be at the airport about 1. So if you leave early in the morning from Bwindi, you could make it to Kigali in time to catch the same day flight into the Serengeti, or we could catch an afternoon flight from Kigali into Arusha National Park with a commercial flight. So same day you would be able to leave Kigali to get into Tanzania to start your safari in Tanzania, or if you're continuing on home or into another country or something like that, you would catch your evening flight out of Kigali onwards. If you have an early morning flight planned, then you would stay another night in Kigali to catch that flight in the morning. But that's all, we can customize all of that, and we talk about that in more detail when we get to that point. So I told you that there's different difficulties in regards to the trek on the mountain. And I want to tell you that Ngahinga National Park is very, very close to the border. So it would be about the same commute from Kigali to Ngahinga, the same as it would be to volcanoes. However, that mountain is hard to trek. So if you do like that challenge, if you do like, mountain climbing or backcountry hiking, etc., and you want to take that challenge and go on a more difficult hike, then we can get you to Ngahinga National Park. In that case, you would actually stay in Muzanche or Ruhengeri here close to the volcanoes, because it's only about an hour drive from this part in Rwanda to Ngahinga to trek the gorillas there. And then after your gorilla trek, you would come back to Rwanda, stay there, and then drive back to Kigali. So we can do that as well, but be prepared. That trek is quite difficult. I had a family do it in the fall of 2018. 2018? Yes. Was it 2018 or 2019? Can't remember now, but they made it. They said it was a challenging trek. They did see the gorillas, but they were tired at the end of it. So this one is also doable. So don't be discouraged by me telling you the trekking is hard. But I also don't want you to go there not being prepared of, doing some exercise, etc. It is, yeah, I could say it is recommended to do a little bit of exercising before you go on your gorilla trek. And one of the reasons why we do the gorilla trek often at the beginning of your tour is for you to still be, acclimatized maybe to a higher elevation because you're going up a mountain. And also to have not done your safari yet, because safari can be exhausting. And I want you to be fit and to be fresh to climb up the mountain to see the mountain gorillas. Don't be discouraged. It sounds worse than it is. Honestly, my gorilla trekking difficulty was not very difficult. It was fairly easy to do. There's stretches that you go higher up a little bit and you have to catch your breath, but honestly, it is not that bad. Everybody can do gorilla trekking, really. If you feel like you cannot, or you feel you may not be able to get up the mountain, but you do want to see the gorillas, in both countries, Rwanda and Uganda, we have something available. It's called a sit-down chair, where the steep stretches or the entire hike, if you feel like you cannot do it, you can actually be carried up the mountain. So if you feel like you cannot make the hike, there is absolutely an opportunity to hire a sit-down chair to get up the mountains for you to go and see the gorillas. So everybody can go and should go see the gorillas, because a lot of the funds are funneled back into conservation to keep those mountain gorillas protected for future generations to see. Minimum age to go and see the gorillas is 15 in both countries. There have been exemptions made. So if you have, say, a 13-year-old or something like that, that is very mature and strong enough to go on the mountain, there are exceptions that can be made. So also those kids of 12, 13 years old could have an opportunity to go and see the gorillas. Okay, so I hope this covers it. If you have any questions regarding gorilla trekking in Uganda or Rwanda, please send me an email, and I'm happy to get back to you and answer any questions you may have. Another primate that we visit in both Uganda and Rwanda, and it can also be done in Tanzania, is chimp trekking. I am not going to cover all the areas where you can go chimp trekking, because I think it's 4 or 5 areas. I will cover the chimp trekking in Kibale National Forest in Uganda. And why am I going to cover that? Because it is considered the best chimpanzee experience in the world. The chimps in Chibale, people in Uganda call it Chibale. We often say Kibale. They are very, very habituated, and they're easily visited in the forest. I went to see them in November 2018, and it was a beautiful sunny day, as you can see. However, be prepared also there for some rain, because Uganda is very rainy all year long. So be prepared. So here are a few impressions of the chimps I saw last time we went. It was very entertaining. Sometimes people compare chimps to Italians because they just don't be quiet. They just keep on chattering in the trees. Suddenly you just see them in the canopy of the trees, and suddenly one of them will start going ah, and everybody will just chime in, and suddenly there's a whole racket going on, and they're jumping from tree to tree, and then suddenly it's quiet again, and they just sit and feed on fruits or leaves or whatever they find, and it's quiet again. So it's quite entertaining. um, Here is a little bit more about where and how. This is the area where we find Kibale Forest. It is kind of halfway in between Murchison Falls, is up here, Murchison Falls National Park, Kibale, and this is Bwendi, impenetrable forest here in Uganda as well. So it's about halfway between those two areas, and it can easily be integrated in a road trip through Uganda. However, we can also do it as a fly-in trip. You would fly from Entebbe to an airstrip close by. It's called Kasese. It's about an hour drive away from the forest, so you can fly over there, and visit the chimps, and then come back to Entebbe, to connect with the flight out, or elsewhere you want to go. Again, it's about a 3-night situation, so we need about 3 nights to facilitate the chimp track. If you just want to do the chimp track in Kibale Forest, there's about 1,500 heads of chimps in Kibale Forest. I tried to find the exact number of the habituated chimpanzees in the forest. I couldn't quite find it. I do remember, though, from my last chimp trekking, that the rangers said there is about 100 habituated chimps in the area, so quite a few. Chimp families are between 10, 12, 15, and 100 chimps. So I am assuming the 100 chimps or close to 100 chimps that we saw are belonging to the same family. Groups, chimp trekking, are about the same size as the gorilla trekking. It's 8 to 10 people in the group going to see the chimps, which may or may not come together once you see the chimps, because sometimes the chimp family splits up, and they, one part of them goes that way, the other part goes that way, and then they will split the groups up as well. But sometimes they all stay together, and so you may end up with some other people checking out the same family of chimps as you do. But the trekking itself is done in a group of 8 to 10 people. Also, about 1 hour of time with the chimpanzees once you come to them. The trekking there, or the hiking there, is honestly very easy to do. It's a nice forest walk. There's of course some uneven areas where you have to step over some roots, or maybe go up a little bit of an incline, but it is not as strenuous as the gorilla trekking would be. So really, it is a good, nice little hike, but not at all exhausting, not at all strenuous, to see the chimps there. Typically, it's about a 3-hour experience. You have a briefing in the morning at the headquarters as well, where they talk a little bit about the habituation and the chimp family, etc. And then you start trekking for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then you spend an hour with the chimps, and then afterwards you come back to the head office. So about a 3 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, but usually not much more than that. So you should be back by headquarters at around 11, 12 o'clock ish. And then the rest of the day can be free, or you can do some other activities that we can discuss when we build your tour itinerary. There are other animals in the forest as well. When you go gorilla trekking too, there will be other animals in the forest. And for Kibale, for instance, you will also see the red-tailed monkeys, some black and white colobus monkeys, the great-cheeked mangabeys. You may come across some small antelope types or a bush pig or something, but those are fairly hard to spot, and they're not necessarily always there. So you will see some other monkeys in the trees, but it's not guaranteed. The guarantee, or there is never really a guarantee to see either chimps or gorillas, but it is about a 95 to 98% guarantee to see the chimps, pretty much 98, 99 for the chimps, and mostly 98% to see the gorillas. I have yet to experience anybody coming back from their chimp or gorilla trek that have not seen them. So I have not yet heard anything about that. So far, touch wood, everything went well, and everybody always saw chimps or gorillas whenever they went on a trekking. What did we forget? Did we forget anything? No, it looks good. So this would be the chimp trekking in Uganda. It's the best experience. Um, Easily integrated via flight or on a road trip through Uganda. Yeah, so easily done. The permit for chimp trekking is 150 US dollars per person for 1 hour chimp trekking. Okay. Now, this was chimps and gorillas, which is typically the main reason why people go and see Rwanda or Uganda. But I do want to spend some time and talk a little bit more about Uganda because it has captured my heart. And I have to say, I've been twice to Uganda for more than 6 days in each time. And I honestly fell in love with the country. It is just beautiful, wonderful to see, very friendly people. Hospitality is spectacular. So much to see there. It never gets boring. There's so many different areas, different ecosystems, different animals, different areas to see. And the people are just so welcoming and friendly and wonderful to visit and to have a chat with and to get to know them and so on. Uganda is considered the best country for expats to go and live because it's just such a welcoming, wonderful, friendly, kind people in Uganda that like I honestly, if you want to see an African country, experience it a little bit closer and see what it is about, Uganda is one of the countries that I would say you can do that in. Another country would be Namibia, and I will talk about Namibia a little bit more in one of the other modules. But let's start with Uganda, as it is really just spectacular. So here are a few pictures. Those are all pictures I took, except for the tea picker person down here. That's an internet picture. But all the other pictures I took either with a little camera or my phone. Here in the corner, up on the top left, is Murchison Falls National Park. And you see a giraffe mama there. She is a subspecies of the African giraffe, and she's a Rothschild giraffe, so endangered species of giraffe only found in Uganda and Kenya, endangered and protected in the area. So this is one of the special species you would see in Murchison Falls in Uganda. This other picture here is the sunrise over the Nile River. We took, or everybody that wants to go on a game drive in Murchison Falls will have to take a ferry over the Nile River. And this is one early morning, shortly after 6 o'clock, when we are waiting for the ferry to get us over the Nile River here in Murchison. Down here at the bottom is one of the crater lakes in the area just outside of Kibale Forest, actually. So if you're doing a drive, you will pass through this area. Beautiful to see, beautiful trees. There are farmsteads, homesteads around there, communities, small communities that you drive through. Just spectacular to see and really beautiful. Tea pickers along the way you will see on your road trip through Uganda. And then this is the school in Bohoma at Windy Impenetrable Forest. So I'll talk about that a little bit more too. And the hippo, we will find hippos almost everywhere in Uganda where there is some wildlife and a river. So when we go on a road trip through Uganda, one of the spots I would strongly encourage you to visit is the Ziwa Rhino Sanctuary, which is home of the Uganda Rhino Fund. Uganda, or the rhinos in Uganda, were extinct at some point in the 1990s. They were declared extinct. There was no more rhinos in Uganda due to poaching and habitat encroachment. So people were just taking all the habitat, and of course, rhino poaching still today is a problem. And then the Uganda Rhino Fund was created, and they have protected the southern white rhinos in Uganda, and they have created something very successful, a sanctuary where they actually keep the rhinos, and they want to have about 40 rhinos in the sanctuary. And once they have more than 40 rhinos, they will actually take the rhinos and put them back into their natural habitat in the national parks in Uganda. Until then, it's still a little while to go. Right now, they have 30 rhinos in the sanctuary, with I think 4 babies been born last year. I think one has already been born this year. And so they are very successful there. Right now, they're suffering because they're closed to the public, and all their funds have been coming through people that come rhino trekking at the sanctuary. You pay a fee there to go and see the rhinos, and they're absolutely always accepting donations as well, which are used to pay the rangers. Every single rhino is protected by a ranger 24/7. So there will be a ranger with them at all times to make sure that they are safe and protected. And because they did that, they have had 0 poaching incidents on the sanctuary, so which is awesome. And they're doing some really important work there. We went with a group of 10 people just earlier this year to Uganda, and we visited the rhino sanctuary, and Lion Dog African Safaris actually donated $2,500 to the Rhino Fund Uganda for their operations, to pay the rangers, to get supplies, etc. So funds are very desperately needed right now because there are no guests. There's nobody coming to see the rhinos, and so they're trying their hardest to keep the rangers there. To the rangers are away from their families because they're not going back in order to keep the virus away from everybody and away from, to keep it contained, etc. So the rangers are not allowed to travel back and forth, so they're staying there. And so they are desperately looking for donations and funds. So if you have some money to spare, feel free to contact me, and I can get you the website, or just find Uganda Rhino Fund and you will find them online if you would like to donate some money to their cause. What you can also do in the area, they actually have a lodge there, and you can stay overnight. And in the very early morning hours, you can take a shoebill trek. So the shoebill stork is a critically endangered prehistoric bird that lives in the swamps around the Ziwa sanctuary. And you can go out in the very early morning hours on a canoe ride, and you can find the shoebill stork there. If you are a birder, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, look it up. Those birds look really, really interesting. You can go back in this module. One of the first pictures I showed you, there was a shoebill on there. And the area is actually one of the most successful sites for seeing the shoebill stork. In one single shoebill track or shoebill boating, people saw 11 different shoebills, which is quite spectacular. So if you want to see the shoebill, this area would be excellent to try and find it. It would be the highest success rate. And you can visit the rhinos, the southern white rhino at the sanctuary, and you can do something really helpful for rhino conservation. So this is one part, not far away from Kampala, about a 2-hour drive from Kampala to get to the rhino sanctuary and see the white rhinos there. What else is there to do? Chimp trekking, gorilla trekking for sure, and then a few other things as well. And I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of what a road trip through Uganda would look like. So be be aware that you will be in the car for between 3 and 7 hours. So not every day it's going to be a long drive, but there are days where you may be in the car for 6 hours or more, depending on the route you pick. And I will talk to you about it, and I'll work through this with you to let you know how long you should be or you would be in the car for. You will drive through some beautiful landscapes. You can stop as many times as you want with the guidance of your guide, just in order to, not to get to your next destination too late. You can take pictures. You can immerse yourself in villages. You can stop and talk to people. You can stop and try some tea picking in one of the plenty tea plantations along the roads there. If you see some people picking tea, your guide will help you and stop and talk to the people, and they will let you try and see how you're doing with the picking. There are so-called banana bikes. These guys here, they load the bananas onto their bikes and they push or pedal these bikes to the next market. So if you come across somebody like that, you can stop and you can actually try and see if you can hold the bike or let alone paddle it. It is hard work. So you can do all those kinds of things. You may come through villages where there's some celebrations. This, for instance, was a graduation celebration for kindergarten in one of the villages. So they were celebrating the end of the school year, marching through town, just being happy, school year's done, yay, we made it, and now school break is coming upon us, and everybody is joining in to celebrate those young pupils to make them feel proud of their accomplishment, etc. So really something cool to see, and yeah, it's just different than what we know here, and really worthwhile to do. Here are some guidelines. Your tour or your road trip through Uganda will be a private guided tour. So you'll have your vehicle. It's typically a 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser with a pop-up roof, because you'll likely go some game driving somewhere. If funds are a little tight, we can also provide you a 4x4 pop-up roof van like these vehicles. They are less expensive to hire. Their roofs come up, so just like in the Land Cruiser, and they do have 4x4 drive, so they can get through, muddy roads or inclines up the mountains and all that kind of stuff. So they do get through those um, um, uneven roads. Maybe not the most uneven roads, but your guide will be able to maneuver around them and so on. So these vehicles are a little bit less for hire. They have up to eight, I believe, 8 people can sit comfortably. Everybody has a window seat, so it's just a seat on either side of the car, 4 rows, so 2, 4, 6, 8 people, and then there's often the passenger seat, which is not taken. We'll put lunch packs, etc., on there. So that's also possible to mitigate costs a little bit. Road trip usually is a length of 6 to 12 nights, depending how much you want to see of the country. We can do a boating safari on the Nile River at Murchison Falls. Remember that one picture I showed you there? Game drives through Murchison Falls and Queen Elizabeth National Park. At Queen, we can do the lion tracking with a researcher from Uganda Wildlife Authorities, where they use telemetry to find the lions with a radio collar on them. So you will get the permit to go off-road in Queens and get close to the lions there. You can stop at in different communities, different villages. You can visit different cultures and communities, like, for instance, the Batwa people. Those are the people that used to live in the forest by where the gorillas are, and they have been forced out of the forests a few years ago or many years ago, and they're now trying to be integrated into community and live a humane life and with dignity and with something to do and with a purpose, being integrated into the community and out of the forest. So you can visit these people too. You'll see a picture a little bit further here. We do have the opportunity or the ability to put some of your driving as flying, and I'll show you that in the next slide. So we can fly you from Kampala to see the chimps at Kibale Forest, or we can fly from Kampala to see the gorillas and then do the rest driving, or you can do everything in driving, or you can do everything in flying. So as I mentioned before, everything I'm telling you, all venues, all areas, all parks, all types of safari can be combined and mixed up. So you don't have to do a road trip just on the road. You can do parts of it flying, or you can do it all in one road trip. So whichever floats your boat, whichever allows you on your timeline and your budget, we can do that. Stay open-minded. There is a little bit of a different time frame in Uganda. Things are going slower in Zanzibar, for instance. Not everybody has the same pace as we have in North America. Be open-minded about how people approach each other, how people talk to each other. If a conversation takes longer than you would anticipate, it's probably because the people in Africa talk to each other differently. They spend some time to get to know each other, even if that's the first time they've seen each other. They will ask about how the family is, how the uncle is everything fine at home, etc. So conversations may sometimes take longer than what you think. They will look different too. Sometimes they will look as if they're just having a little small talk, but they may actually discuss some important points. So stay open-minded and ask your guide questions and ask for explanations, etc. when something looks different or so. Be prepared for a really awesome experience. Find the old Africa. And with that, I mean, Uganda is a country that has not experienced tons of tourism yet. So it's not very much spoiled by tourism yet. If you drive through a village and you see kids coming to the road, all they want to do is greet you. They want to wave at you. And please wave back to them, because they love that. They will laugh and they will call and they will just be so happy to see you, and they don't expect anything from you. Where in other countries that have experienced a lot of tourism, like Kenya, for instance, and parts of Tanzania, there will sometimes be a hidden agenda. So kids may want a ride, or kids may want some candy, or kids may want something, or people come to beg along the roads. That's not yet the case in Uganda. People are honestly just happy to see you, and you will see that in their faces, and you will feel that when you drive down those roads. It's quite refreshing, and it's quite wonderful to see. So as you can hear, likely, I am a big fan of Uganda, and I encourage you to learn more about it and ask more questions if a road trip through Uganda seems attractive to you. We can offer everything in all three comfort levels: economy, mid-range, and luxury range, depending on your budget and timeline. So this would be just a sample itinerary, a sample trip, road trip in Uganda, and I'll tell you what that is about. So you would land in Entebbe, likely on your international flight, and we would take you out of the city and have you stay north, in the northern part of Kampala, to get out of the traffic in the morning when you start your trip. So your first night will be in Kampala, in a hotel, boutique hotel, little guest house or something like that, in Kampala. The next day you will start driving north towards Murchison Falls. You will stop at the Rhino Sanctuary, which is about 2/3 of the road. Typically, you arrive there by lunchtime. You can have lunch and then visit the rhinos, or you can visit the rhinos and then have lunch, depending what time you get there. And then after that, you will carry on to Murchison Falls, where you will spend 2 nights, with 1 full day of game driving and boat safari on the Nile in Murchison Falls. If you want to, like I mentioned before, if you want to do some birding and want to see the Shubel at Ziwa Sanctuary, you can spend the night here, and we add a day on, or we'll just spend 1 night at Murchison's, depending on how you wanna work it. From Murchison Falls, so in total, this tour would probably be about driving time 5 hours. With the stop at Ziwa, probably a 7 or 8 hour day on the road and visiting the rhinos. Then the next day you would be driving through some beautiful areas here and get to Kibale Forest in this area here, where you would spend 2 nights in order to see the chimps on your full day there. Beautiful drive around Kibale. Next day you would take your time. If you were to go straight from Kibale Forest to Queen Elizabeth, it would only be about 3 hours maximum driving, but I encourage you to take your time, because this is the beautiful Crater Lakes area where you see those villages where you see the tea plantations, where you can take your time and stop in a village, buy some snacks somewhere to see a local grocery store, or walk through a market, stop at somewhere to have a cup of coffee, etc. So take your time to get to Queens. Outside of Queen Elizabeth National Park will be the spot where you likely will stay over. If you get to Queens early, you can do an afternoon game drive in Queen Elizabeth National Park, or you can just rest up. If you spend some time on the road and you get there mid-afternoon or so, rest up. And next day would be your drive from Queen Elizabeth or through Queen Elizabeth National Park to windy impenetrable forest in the north. We would visit the gorillas in the north. So this can be done on a leisure day. Most of your drive would be through Queen Elizabeth National Park. You can do a game drive here in the morning in the northern part, or you can skip the northern part if you've already done half a day game driving here the day before. You can go right to Ishasha, which is the southern park, where you'll get a chance to find tree climbing lions in the Ishasha sector of Queen Elizabeth. It's the southern part of Queen Elizabeth National Park. From there, it's just a short drive, maybe an hour or so, hour and a half, to get to Bohoma, which is the town where you would stop and stay over to do gorilla trekking the next day. You'd stay another night at Bohoma, and then the next day you could fly from Bohoma, from the close by airstrip. It's about an hour and a half from Bohoma to the airstrip. From the airstrip, you fly to Entebbe, where you can catch a plane into the Serengeti to continue with your safari in Tanzania. So this is how it can be put together. Like I said, it can be shortened. It can be made longer because there's another park here. It's called Lake Mburu National Park, which is quite nice as well. There's some very, very beautiful venues. So you could do this last stretch driving as well. You would have to stay overnight halfway through. It cannot be done in one day. It's too far to drive. And then you would likely also have to stay in Entebbe for the night to catch the flight the next morning out into the Serengeti or to Arusha, whichever is your next destination. So this is what it could look like: 7-8 days, maybe longer, maybe shorter, all depending on what you would like to do. Okay, so these are the Batwa people in Bohoma, the Wendy Batwa community. You can see the cultural center there. They are making they're making some clothing. They're making hats. They're making caps. They are trying to be members of the community and integrate into the community, which is hard for them because their lifestyle has been just so very different than the lifestyle of the people in the village. So you can see them there. This is the top of Murchison Falls. We climbed up there. It's about a 45-minute hike up to the falls. Quite worthwhile. With some information, it's guided, so there will be a local guide there and talk about Murchison Falls, how it got its name. There's actually a second falls there. It's Uhuru Falls, just a little bit to the north of that, which you can see on your hike up to the falls. So quite interesting, beautiful to see. Chimps and gorillas, of course. Uganda and Rwanda, absolutely worthwhile to think about if you would want to visit. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you would want it to be part of your next adventure in Africa. This is it for Module 3. So this is all the information I want to share with you today. Next time, Module 4, we will talk about activities in Africa. For those active people of you that would want to climb maybe Mount Kilimanjaro, this is Mount Kilimanjaro, seen as from the Kenya side. So this is Kenya, and Mount Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania, so somewhere in between there's the border. Climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro on different routes. We will talk about the Ngorongoro Highland Track done in Tanzania along the Great Rift Valley Wall in Ngorongoro Conservation Area. We'll talk a little bit about the Serengeti Marathon, and we'll also talk about the Tok Trail in Namibia. That's this impression here. It's a short hike over 2 nights in the Namib Brant Reserve, just outside of the Namib Desert. And we will talk about some cultural experiences in Tanzania. So even if you're not inclined to do any of those, overnight hikes or climbs up the mountain or run a marathon in the Serengeti, tune in next time because we'll talk about um, cultural experiences in Tanzania, which is quite beautiful as well. So interesting to see. And I will get back here to you. So this was it for today. I do not have a running time on my screen here, so I hope I didn't keep you for too long. If I did, just skip over the parts you don't like. If I didn't, yay! I hope you had a good time. I hope it was interesting and informative. Again, thank you for tuning in. I know this is not how we used to do things in the past. It may be something we may want to do more and more in the future, depending on where we get after this is all over. Please stay safe. I want to also say thank you to everybody who has reached out to me. Thank you so very much for your emails, for your encouraging words. For your kind words, for telling me that you like the modules, that you're looking forward to go to Africa, or that you're thinking about going to Africa. This is so much encouragement for me because I know things will change. I know we will not travel the way we traveled before. Things will likely change. And I do hope that we will continue visiting Africa because it's important. It's important for us to protect the wildlife. It's important for us to support the communities there. Africa is depending on tourism. It's a big part of the economy, and you know they do like us coming there. They do like showing their world to us. They do like hearing us talk about our world to them because for them many of them or most of them will never make it to North America. So for us, showing them pictures and telling them about our lives is something they really like. I make sure I have some pictures of snow on my phone to show them because it's hilarious. Like especially kids, if you show kids some pictures where you play in the snow, it's so wonderful to see their impressions, how they can't believe what they see, their wonder in their eyes, and they laugh, and sometimes I think they don't believe me that it's a picture actually from home, but it's just it's nice to share or being able to share our world with them, and they love sharing their world with us as long as we are respectful, as long as we treat them nice and fair and kind, and as long as we are good visitors and don't exploit them or don't take them for granted. I think we should continue supporting them and visiting them. So, anyways, I don't want to move ahead more. I hope I'll see you next time for our next module. Put your runners on for some activities in Africa, and stay healthy, stay safe, stay connected with your neighborhood, with your family, and I will see you next time. Thank you for checking in.